Hey, what's going on, champs? I'm Aaron Deliosa. Welcome to an Immigrant's Life podcast, my podcast about immigrants and immigration and everything in between. Thank you for listening and downloading the show, and thank you for supporting my dad.
Immigrant Nation, we are back for another episode. Like my son said on top, I'm Aaron Deliosa, and this is an Immigrant's Life. For the OGs, thank you as always for your support. I appreciate you for sticking around and for your continued support. And if you're new here, welcome, and I'm glad that you're here. I hope you like what you hear. And if you want to follow us on all the social media, our handle is @AnImmigrant'sLife. I post artworks there that are related to the episode, audio snippets, and whatever else that tickles my fancy. So please follow us and like and share and all that good stuff. Anyways, let's talk about this week's episode. I love this episode as it reminded me to be grateful for what I have and be proud of what I have accomplished. And I hope you get that feeling too by listening to this episode. Let's not waste time. Without further ado, let's get into the show. Isa, dalawa, tatlo. Today's guest is an entrepreneur and an avid cyclist. The person that takes most of my money next to my wife because he's my bike mechanic. Everyone, please welcome Eli Cohen.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be taking your money, like you said.
I know, I knew you're gonna like that.
That's good. Hey, you know what, man? It's not my fault. Your bike has given you issues sometimes.
Hey, man, don't worry about it. I was just busting your balls.
I swear, I'm not putting thumbtacks in your wheels. I promise.
Imagine. Anyways, first of all, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And before we move on, if you have anything to promote, go ahead, my man. It's your time.
Okay. Yeah, check out my my little business. It's twowheelsmtl.com. If you want to book a tune-up or any kind of repair for your bike. That's basically my gig, my specialty, my hobby, my passion. I'm an avid cyclist. I do mountain bikes, road bikes. If you have a bike and it needs to be fixed, check me out. Facebook, Instagram. Like I said, my website, twowheelsmtl.com. That's two, like number two. So,
yeah. So, but you know, I have listeners around the world. You're not going to India anytime soon, you know what I mean? So it's just around the area, Montreal.
That's right. Montreal, Gatineau now. I'll make some exceptions maybe to go to Toronto if you really need, but yeah, I'm not international yet.
Someday.
Maybe, hopefully.
Right? Yeah. So we'll start from the start. Where was Eli originally from?
So I was born in Israel. In the north of Israel, on a kibbutz, which I see you have the background of. And actually, it was the first kibbutz. It was established in 1908, I believe. I should probably know this, but I think it's 1908 or 1910. So it was the first ever kibbutz, and it's situated right on the southern end of the Sea of Galilee, or Lake Kinneret, as they call it in Israel. And basically, it's a small agricultural community. I think there were probably around 500 people living there when I was born. Now there might be a little more, maybe 700 or 800. And it was basically like, an agricultural farm type community, beautiful place in a valley surrounded by big mountains, like an absolute paradise. So that's where I was born.
Beautiful place. But just for the people that doesn't know, what's a kibbutz?
So yeah, that's a good question. I should probably preface this. So a kibbutz is an interesting ideological way of living. It's based off of socialism, but I'm going to say that it has some democratic roots as well. And it's kind of a hybrid system. So basically the way that it works is you have a governing committee, which are all elected officials, elected by the people. And this government body basically manages, everything. And every individual person within the kibbutz has his or her assigned position, role. And whatever your role is, your income, your earnings is distributed equally amongst everybody. So you could be a farmer working in the banana fields, or you could be a caretaker, like my mother was, taking care of young children, or you can be working at one of the factories that we have on the kibbutz. And whatever your job is, it's, your earnings are the kibbutz's earnings, and the earnings are distributed equally amongst everybody. So there's, I guess, a great sense of equality. Like I said, it's very ideological. It's focused on group effort, which is actually where the name kibbutz comes from. It comes from it sort of has roots in the Hebrew word kvutza, or group, which translates to group. So that's kind of like the origins of it. It was, like I said, this was the first kibbutz established in 1908. And at first it started with maybe 20 people, 30 people. And it was a very, very tough environment. It was just desert with, actually, it wasn't only desert. It was a little bit of wetland as well, like very marshy land. And this group of people, they came there with these ideologies. They wanted to erect this, this society. And so they planted eucalyptus trees to soak up the water. They started to irrigate the land. They started to, work it, and basically created this agricultural community that grew and grew and grew. And then by the end of the century, in the 1990s, there were many, many kibbutzim all around Israel.
Who in your family moved to the area first?
So this is an interesting and long story. Basically, it started with, maybe I'll go back a little bit. So my Israeli side of the family is my mother's side. And my father's side, actually, they're also European in the roots, but my father actually was born in Canada. He came to Israel in the 1990s and met my mother.
Is he Jewish though?
He's Jewish, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But my mother's side of the family, they were originally Europeans, Polish, Lithuanian, Bulgarian, all kinds of stuff. And they all had, around, I think it was in the 1930s, just before the war, World War II, of course, when things started to get a little bit uncertain there. A lot of them, basically got on boats and fled Europe. And so that was the case for my grandmother's family, who fled to Brazil, which is where she was born, my grandmother. And later, when Israel was established as a country, which was in 1948, she decided to do aliyah, we call it. So basically, like to immigrate back, to come back to the Holy Land, to the chosen land. And that was a movement that was very big in those days. Zionists all over the world, people who believed in Israel as a nation, decided to come back and to help build this nation. So my grandmother came from Brazil. My grandfather came from Bulgaria, and they met on the kibbutz. They both arrived on the kibbutz, and they met there, and that's how it started.
That's so crazy, man. It's so insane. Like, your grandma's in Brazil and your grandfather's in Europe, and then suddenly they're like in one spot. You know what I mean? It's not like they have Facebook or Tinder or whatever else. They'll just end their destiny or whatever you want to call it.
It is really, really crazy. And it actually gets even crazier because I don't know the whole story like off the top of my head, but there are records that I found like that our family had, some letters that were written. And apparently the reason why my family actually moved to Brazil in the first place is because they were given an ultimatum by the Polish government, because they were actually caught producing moonshine, I believe it was. So it's funny because like I guess they, they were involved in some kind of legal manufacturing of moonshine, which during those times also is, I don't know if there was a prohibition in Europe, but there was definitely one in the States. And I don't know if that affected anything or not, but anyways, for whatever reason, they were not allowed to do that. And so they were kicked out, and that's how they found themselves on the way to Brazil. So yeah, crazy story. It's just like all just chance occurrences, random events that just led to this.
Exactly. So you mentioned that your town was like a sleepy town. What was there for a child to do?
Oh man, I actually think that it was probably the best environment for a child. Yeah. So first of all, like, it's hard to imagine a kibbutz, so I'm just going to sort of like try to, draw a picture for you. But basically, it's like it's a gated community, and all of the buildings, all the different houses are attached with like sidewalks. There's no streets. There's like one big street that cars can actually fit on that will go around the circumference. But aside from that, it's all just sidewalks. So in terms of safety, it's like the ultimate place for safety. In terms of like just being able to run outside the door and just play and have fun. Like it was absolute heaven, growing up. And what's cool is that, you're not just the only kid, like you're growing up with a bunch of kids that are your own age. You're basically like, my grade, like my year, I was born in 1992. I think we were like 20 or so kids, maybe a little bit less, but It was like 20. Yeah, it was like 20 kids that were like best friends, and we were always with each other. And, from the moment we were born, we were kind of raised together. There's like these, so in Hebrew, it's called Bet Yeladim, which translates to like house of the kids. And it's like, it's like a place that you go to after school. So
Okay.
You go to school together, you spend the day together, then you go to this house, and then you basically do activities together, you chill, you do homework, whatever it is. And then only later in the evening when your parents are finished, work and stuff, you go home. So you're basically always with other people. And it's like very unifying, very community oriented, just a completely different way of life. So in terms of things to do, like there's so much. I mean, like,
it's endless.
Yeah, it's mainly focusing on like nature, like a lot of being outside, a lot of like going in the fields, picking fruits, understanding like agriculture. We have animals, cows, chickens, horses. So it's like it's not like the Netflix type of stuff, it's not like technology and iPads and all that, but it's more like, and this was obviously also in the 90s, so it's a different context entirely. But like, yeah, it was very, very wholesome, good fun,
Did you guys had electricity?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, like it's you have electricity. We even had internet, like starting in 1999, maybe. We were one of the. I actually remember like when they were first putting in the network, like they were hooking it up. There was like a tester, and they wanted to try. They had like a few homes that they wanted to sort of like test out, and so we were selected as one of the homes. And I remember at the time I was I had like my room in the house was like this very, very small little room. It was like it was small. I want to say it was almost like the size of this little closet. Like my bed just barely fit in there. And then all of a sudden we put a computer there as well, because it was like where they had put the Ethernet connection. And so like my room shrunk even more because we had like this big white box in there, like the old computers, the CRT monitors and all that. So we had that put in, and yeah, like we had internet like very early on. I think it was 99. And I remember like being a very, very cool thing, like very new.
But you said that everyone's equal, right? But how come only few houses has internet? How come not everyone has internet?
No, obviously. So like after a few years, like everybody started to get internet, but like in the first few months, it was like they wanted to just test it out. So they didn't want to overload this. Like I don't know the whole like reason, but I think they wanted to test it out with a few homes first to see like how the network could be supported. And then once they saw that it was feasible, they expanded it to all the other homes. Today, if you go there, everybody has internet, everybody has Netflix and flat screen TVs, and it's like, you know, very developed. But this was obviously late 90s. So
For sure. So you mentioned that you're always with these 20 kids, and I'm sure there are moments that like, I don't want to chill with these people all the time. And I'm sure there's like an asshole kid there that you don't want.
Yes. There were two guys I remember. There were these two kids that like nobody really liked. They were just bullies, man. And I remember, so I had a dog at that time. Her name is Phoebe. She was like this German Shepherd mix. And she was such an amazing dog. Like she was super, super, what's the word? Like, protective. And I remember one time, like this guy, he came up to, I don't remember what it was we were fighting over. I think he may have like stolen some of my Pokemon cards or something. But he came up to my house and he was just annoying me. And he was just being a real bully. And he was even like bugging my dog. And this dog, the most gentle dog in the world that would never hurt a soul, she could smell something rotten about this kid. And she like jumped up at him and like, she didn't bite him, but she stood up for me. Literally, she actually like stood on her hind legs and like got on him and was like, hey, get away from here right now. Like, you're not welcome here. And it was actually a pretty cool moment, because ever since then, he just left me alone. He would never, especially when the dog was around, he wouldn't even come near me.
So let's say, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, for the most part, like everybody else was super chill. I had two amazing friends who were like three musketeers, always together, always doing adventures. Like, oh man, it was cool. It was a very, very nice time. Yeah.
Wait, how do you join the kibbutz? Like, can I just join, or you have to be Jewish?
That's a good question. I don't know if you have to be Jewish. I think you do. I'm not sure. It's weird. Okay. Like, Judaism means a different thing to Israelis as it does to maybe Jewish Canadians, or to Christians, I should say, or to any other religion. Like, to most religions, you know, the religion that they follow, it's a religion. That's what it is. But for Jewish people, you could be Jewish and not religious, if that makes sense. It's more like, it's like an identity, and it's like a cultural identity. So even though you might have to be Jewish to be in the kibbutz, like you can be secular. You can actually be even atheist, I would say. Like, you don't have to be praying at all or believe in any God or anything. But if you're Jewish, like, it's kind of like an identity. You're part of the tribe. You're part of the part of the tribe.
So your grandparents was in Europe, you mentioned. Did they escape the German invasion?
They did. I was very lucky. Like, I mean, not me directly, but I'm lucky in the sense that like most of my family did not suffer the consequences of the Nazi invasion. But I mean, obviously, like, that's not the case for most Jews. You know, most Jews, their history is directly linked to that, to the Holocaust, and to, you know, the terrible things that happened in World War II. So it's in some ways, like, because my identity is Jewish, like, it's a pain that I carry with me as well. But like, if I trace back my lineage directly, I don't think many people in my immediate family were affected very much.
I'm actually reading about a Holocaust book. It's called Night by
Eli Wiesel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a great book.
I've read a few books. I've read Schindler's List, but Night is like, every time I read them, like, yo, this is fascinating, but every page is like a heartbreak.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it really is, but it's important. Like, it's something that I think everybody needs to educate themselves about, because it's a dark part of humanity that always is going to lurk there and may always lurk there. And if we don't educate ourselves about it, we may repeat it. It might. I mean, genocide has happened since, and that's something that, the Holocaust got a lot of recognition around the world, but there's many genocides that have gone on that did not. And I think that it's, if it's something that can reoccur more than once, it says something about the human condition. So, and that's not to say that everybody's bad, or it's not to say that, that humans are naturally gravitate towards bad, but I think it's like our duty to educate ourselves in order to be aware of what action, like where actions can take you and where they can lead.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it's such a sad situation. And especially now with the pandemic and, the government having like passports and, mandates and whatnot, and people are equating that to the yellow star.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, is it really a yellow star, or is it just like, you know what I mean? What do you think of that?
You're going to put me on the spot here. I think the intentions were good. I don't think that, like, especially in the Western world, some people, like, I've heard it all. I've heard the conspiracy theories, and I've heard people like thinking like that, this is just a way for them to take more and more from us. And it's like kind of like a staircase that leads to like an authoritarian, like dictatorship. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think, like, we live in a Western society. We live in a democratic society. We live in a place that's pretty liberal, or, well, actually kind of very liberal. And so, like, I think that, the intentions were pure, the intentions were good. And I think that it started off as it should have. But I think that, like, with governments, the problem is that they don't respond quickly to the changing environment sometimes, because of all the red tape and because of all the policy, and because governments are designed by nature to be protective of people. So it's a machine that rolls very slowly. So I think by the time that we started to realize that maybe vaccine mandates and vaccine passports were not necessarily the most effective thing anymore, the government was still implementing these. And people who were being exposed to the media, which obviously changes at a much quicker pace, started to get the wrong idea about it. And I think it was this, like, I think it actually took a pretty natural course at the end of the day. The people showed the government that this is not what they want anymore. It wasn't necessary. And yes, there were some protests. Mind you, it didn't get violent or at least too violent. And I think that overall it stayed pretty reasonable. And the government responded in accordance to what the people wanted. So I think overall the situation went pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. I agree with you. It wasn't as bad. Like, and touching back about your opinion about the government, is just, I feel like the government is like a parent that like said something and then he realized, oh shit, I said something wrong, but he cannot retract that or else he will look weak in front of the child. So it's just like, yeah, let's just continue doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good analogy, actually. It's true. Like, how many parents say something and then it's like they don't want to go back on the word because like their ego's in the way, and like they're like the authority, right? They want to keep that authoritative power. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's not because they mean bad, but it's because they just have a certain image to uphold. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think that's what the government,
yeah, they didn't, no one knew what to do. You know what I mean? And like you said, it's a machine that it moves so slowly that, it takes time for them to decide. And then when they decide, ego comes in and they just cannot retract.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go back to you. Actually, no. There's one question I want to talk about. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Do you mind talking about that?
Oh man. Yeah, like I said earlier, I don't shy away from anything, and yeah, we can talk about it for sure. Yeah, go for it. Ask me.
So what's your opinion about it?
My opinion about it, like any conflict between two people, is it's absolutely horrible. It's appalling, and I think that there's been so many unnecessary deaths, so much unnecessary pain, so much unnecessary anxiety. That's the reality of it, is the fact that, there's never ever good that comes out of conflict. It's only uncertainty, it's pain, it's generational trauma. So my opinion towards the conflict itself, yeah, not good. If you ask me, like, politically, it's a difficult thing, because you can understand both sides. If you think about it, like, Israel, it has its rights to be a nation, as anybody does, as any group of people does. So they have to protect themselves. They have to make sure that their people are protected. They have to ensure that their people have a place that they can thrive in and succeed in. And the government of Israel, for the most part, has the good intentions when it comes to that. And then, of course, the same goes for the Palestinian people. But I think when it comes to Palestinian governing bodies, it's maybe not the same story. I feel like there's some things that that their governing bodies, well, like Hamas, for example, which is recognized as a terror group, are doing things that are not necessarily in the favor of their people. They're maybe trying to take down the Israelis and succeed in their own way, but they're also hurting their people at the same time. So I don't see the same good faith on that side as I do necessarily with the Israeli government. But that's politically speaking. And again, if I go back to the people and how they should live, of course, every single civilian in this world has the right to live comfortably, safely, and with all the necessities that they need: food, water, shelter.
For sure. Of course, we're not politicians. How would you think they should fix it? Like, they should cut the land in half, separate everyone? How do you think it should be done?
Good question. I think that there definitely needs to be a separation of land. I think that the populations differ quite a lot, culturally, and religiously, and in other ways. So to combine the two people in one place could be a little bit difficult. And I think that each of them is entitled to their own place where they can be who they are and practice their own faith and feel comfortable in their own culture. But at the same time, a lot of people don't know this, but there's hundreds of thousands of Arabs that live within Israel and coexist beautifully. And there are many, many villages where, you have, Muslim Arabs and Jewish people working in the same place, going to the same schools, and sort of existing together. But when it comes to the Palestinians, it's a different story. And I think that, I think maybe like a certain barrier separation would be necessary. But there has to be some kind of way that, both people get the resources that they need and have respective governments that care for their people and work together and, help each other thrive in a way, like sort of like an economy that works alongside each other. But whether that's possible or not, I think it's a lot of work to put their fundamental ideologies aside to make that work. It's
Exactly, like you said earlier, ego.
Yeah, maybe it goes back to ego. Exactly.
Let's talk about your immigration to Canada.
Sure.
Who moved first? Who decided to move to Canada? Why Canada?
So my father, as I said earlier, was from Montreal, from Côte Saint-Luc, actually, and he moved to Israel. He met my mom in the kibbutz. They had me. They had my sister, and then about 10 years. So this is like 2001, give or take. He started to. He was in contact with one of his friends back here. And his friend basically told him that he has like a job opening, and because his friend had inherited this company from his parents, and he said to my dad, "Hey, listen, like there's a good opportunity here for you. You have experience working in a factory, because my dad worked at a factory in Israel. Maybe you'd be good as like an operation, as like a like a VP of operations. Somebody who can take a more leadership role."
Already VP.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. VP of operations. Yeah. So it was a big opportunity. And I think my father, I think he believed that our opportunities in Israel would be limited because of the way that the kibbutz was operating, and because it was socialist, right? Like you're never really going to be, standing above the crowd. You're never going to be making it as like a big tech entrepreneur there. You're never, I mean, you could within Israel, but within the kibbutz, it's a little limited. And I think he saw this opportunity to bring us to the big city and to sort of have us experience like city life and opportunities and all that kind of stuff. And I think that thought was appealing to him. And so in 2002, I think it was summer, he decided to bring us all here.
Also, in one shot, you guys all moved.
Yep, one shot. My father, my mother, and my sister and I.
How old were you then?
So I was 10 years old.
10 years old.
Yeah.
How did you feel? Did you even travel around Israel then, or this is like the first time you're traveling?
Dude, so I'll tell you a funny story. When my parents first broke it to us that we were going to move to Canada, I started bawling my eyes out. This was like a few months before. And I just remember my parents sitting us down, my sister and I, and they were like, "Guys, your mom and I have been talking about it, and we think it's going to be a good idea if we move to Canada." And like immediately I just started bawling. And see, this is the reason why is because I had all my friends there. Like I was a happy kid. I had everything there. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, you got Phoebe watching you.
I got exactly. So I was obviously like really devastated. And I remember after we had this family talk, I went over to my sister and I was like wiping away tears still. And I was like, "Mom, on the day that we're gonna fly, I'm gonna run away. I'm gonna run away. I'm gonna go to my friend's house." Never mind, my friend's house was like 3 doors down. I was like, "I'm gonna run away to my friend's house. I'm gonna go into his basement. I'm just gonna hide there, and mom and dad are just gonna have to fly on their own." This is the logic of a 10-year-old. And my sister, of course, she was like, "Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm gonna come with you." I was like, "Okay, perfect." So we had this plan to run away on the day that we were gonna fly, and to hide in my friend's basement until my parents decided, okay, we're just gonna not look for them anymore and fly alone. But obviously, that was not the reality. And actually, when the day came, I was like pretty excited. I was gung ho. I was like, "Yeah, let's do this. Let's see what Canada is like." So yeah, we moved and we came with absolutely nothing. I don't even know how much money we had in our name, but it couldn't have been much. Like I think my father's parents, so my grandparents on my father's side, were actually paying for our rent and for our schooling at first. So we got ourselves a little apartment in a duplex in Côte St. Luc. And that was like the biggest cultural shock of my life. I started, school was so different. In Israel, school was like an open campus where like you had a bunch of buildings sort of like not really connected to one another, and you had fields in between, and you would just go from one building to the next for each class. And then all of a sudden I came here, and school was like a prison. It was like one building, and you go out the rear door for your recess, and then you're like encapsulated by a fence, and you're like, you're staring through this fence at the street on the other side, watching like the world pass you by. And it was just so depressing. But slowly I got used to it, and North American life started to seep in and take over, and I think after like 2 or 3 years, I was pretty well adjusted.
Did you go to a Jewish school or just a normal school?
Yeah, my first 2 years, I went to a Jewish private school called JPPS. And the reason why, I think, was my parents wanted us to have like an easier integration time. But honestly, I don't think that was a great idea, because, man, if they had only sent me to a French school, I would have been talking French now, and I would have been having a much easier time here in Quebec. But it was good though. It was good. Like, the culture shock wasn't too extreme.
How was your English then?
It wasn't bad, because my father taught me English since I was pretty young. But here's another funny story I'll tell you. So I told you that we moved here in the summer, right? It was like July. So my grandparents decided that if we were going to come here in the summer, that they were going to put us into like, some kind of sport. And for me, it was soccer. So I remember being put into this, I think it was the Hampstead Soccer League or something like that. And I started meeting some kids there, and I started making like my first friends, and everything was going well. But like, I was bothered a little bit inside, because, here I was like listening to them talking their slang and just having fun and speaking like kids do. And I was like using this very proper English, and I was like speaking with an accent, and it just like, I just didn't feel like I was fitting in as well as I wanted to. So I remember like going back home every day, looking at myself in the mirror, and like reciting to myself the slang that they were using, and just practicing in the mirror to like get rid of my accent and like totally assimilate myself. And that's what I did. Like I tried very, very hard to fit in. I didn't want to be like this sore thumb that's sticking out, So within like 1 year, I was basically like fully fluent, speaking the slang, got rid of my accent, and I just wanted as little attention on me as possible. So
like the kibbutz life.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't used to the attention. To be honest, I don't like the attention. Like, I was never like much of a crowd type person. So my goal was to just fly under the radar, don't bring too much attention to myself. Maybe the bullies won't pick on me that way.
Tell me about the day you saw a bag at a phone booth. I love the story.
Oh my God. Okay. So I'll maybe just for your listeners, I'll give like a little like backstory. So in Israel, like it's obviously, especially in the 1990s, after the fall of the Oslo Accords, there's a lot of bombings and stuff going on. And growing up in the 90s, you were taught to be suspicious of any foreign object. Like we actually had a word for it. It was called chefetz chashud, which means like suspicious item. And if you went anywhere in public and you saw like a bag or something that was unaccompanied, you call the bomb squad right away. And like they came in there, they had like this robot, it would either detonate it or like open it up or whatever. So here I was, 10 years old, and I came to Canada. And one day I'm at the Côte St. Luc Mall, just doing some grocery shopping with my mother. And I'm passing by this phone booth, and I see a woman's purse just like lying in the phone booth, So all the bells started going off in my head. And I was like, Chefetz Chashud, Chefetz Chashud. I was like, no, this is not right, man. This is going to go off any moment. So I remember like telling my mom, like, Mom, there's a purse there. Like, we got to tell somebody. This is dangerous stuff. Somebody needs to do something. And she's like, okay, yeah, you're right. I don't know why she fed into my anxieties. Like she was,
because she's going through shit too.
Yeah, I guess so. And so luckily, like there was like what do you call it? A fire truck nearby. And I went up to the firefighters and I'm like, listen, there's a person there. It could be a bomb. You guys need to go check it out. And they're looking at me with the most confused faces ever. They're like, what? So, but nonetheless, they took my warnings and they went in there. Mind you, they weren't wearing any of their protective equipment, and they just grabbed this thing and opened it up. And of course, it's just makeup and whatever inside. And they're like, all right, thanks for telling us, kid. We'll try to find the person this belongs to.
Wait, where was your mom while this is happening?
She was there with me, but she just let me take charge. She just let me handle the situation. I don't know.
Did you turn around and you're like, yo, Mom, what the hell, man? Help me out here.
Yeah, kind of. I was like, yeah, this is not a safe situation. But what's funny is like afterwards, I felt like such a hero. I was like, fuck yeah, man. I just saved the day.
Well, you did for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so funny. Did that happen again? Or that was like kind of told you that, oh, you know what? We're safe here.
I'm sure, I can't remember any other stories, but I'm sure that for the next like year or two afterwards, I was definitely still like on alert, even today, there's still remnants of it. I'm like Jason Bourne, I walk into a building and I have to like locate the exits, it's like, there's a gunman in here. Like, how do I get out? I don't know if that's my Israeli side or that's just me watching too many action movies.
No, that's your Israeli side for sure. The idea of like, they might collect us again.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like that. It's that paranoia, like the, always stay on your toes kind of thing.
Exactly, because you're like always on a fight or flight mode, right? It's trauma.
Yeah, it is. And I actually was in Israel in 2006 when the Intifada broke out with Lebanon. And I was there just for like summer vacation to, visit my grandmother and see some friends. And I remember sitting she had like this swing set outside. And it was a beautiful day. It was like super sunny, like 30 something degrees, hot, beautiful day. And I was just having a great time relaxing, swinging on the swing set. And then all of a sudden I remember hearing what sounded like distant fireworks. And I remember thinking like, that's really weird. Like there's no holiday going on. There's nothing to celebrate. Like, why, what is going on? And then I guess this is where my Canadian side was too active, because then it clicked and I was like, wait a second. So I ran inside, I put on the news, and then sure enough, like the nearest village, maybe 15 minutes away, it's actually a city. It's called Tiberias. It was getting bombed, and it was, it had what you call Katyusha missiles being launched on it. So that was a scary time. I went in, I got my grandma, I told her, listen, we have to be ready to hop into the shelters, because in Israel, you basically have bomb shelters everywhere. Like it's true. Like every house has to have like a bomb shelter within a certain range from it. So I think the
Wow.
one closest to my grandma's house was like literally 50 meters away. And not only that, every house in Israel needs to be constructed with a security room, a room that's built a little bit tougher than all the others. So it's like maybe 2 layers of concrete instead of one, just in the event that there's, an attack. So that was a scary time, I remember. And my dad actually ended up coming from Canada to get us out, because it was getting a little bit scary. So yeah, so there were some intense moments. But man, that's life there. And it's not just us, it's the Palestinians on the other side. They're experiencing the same thing. The Lebanese, the same thing. Syrians, the same thing. It's just like, it's an area of uncertainty, of conflict, of just ever-changing power. So I'm like one story of like thousands, millions there, of like people experiencing these traumas and stuff. Yeah.
For sure. Let's talk about your time in Barcelona.
Sure. Yeah.
Why did you go there?
I followed a girl there. That's always the start of a bad story.
I love bad stories. Let's go.
I had my girlfriend at the time. She wanted to study in Barcelona, and I saw that as an opportunity to go there too, and to explore the culture and to explore the world a little bit, to see Europe. So yeah, she got a student visa, and she was going to be there for 6 months, and I wanted to be there with her. But the problem was that as a North American, you could only be there for, I think, 90 days out of 180. So like 3 months. And I was like, damn, how do I stay there for 6 months? So I found out that they were actually issuing these, what they call a youth mobility visa. It's like only 1,000 applicants a year get accepted. And, if you meet the requirements, if like you're a young person wanting to explore Spain and whatever, they'll issue you a 6-month visa. So I actually ended up applying for that, and I got it. And so that was really cool. I was able to go there. And with my luck, like month 3 is like when COVID hit, so I had to come back. But
wait, why do you have to come back?
I didn't have to come back, but the thing is that I was going to find a job there and start making money and whatever. But because of the pandemic, everything locked down. And so I found myself suddenly not being able to find a job at all. I was in a foreign country, and I didn't have anybody. It was locked down. So I wasn't going to stay there. It was just super scary, uncertain times. I just wanted to come back.
And then you realize the girl is crazy.
Exactly. No. I don't want to say that. No. So let's put it this way: we were too different to stay together. In case he ever listens to this.
We're not gonna say names, so it's fine.
Exactly. Yeah. We got back and we isolated, and then shortly afterwards we realized it wasn't the right thing. And it was actually the best decision I ever made, because shortly after that, I met my current girlfriend, which is amazing. And we're super happy, and we're living together now, and so things really worked out for me.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But Spain is beautiful, like Barcelona in particular. Amazing city. It's like I describe it as like the Quebec of Spain, because first of all, a lot of people there don't consider themselves Spanish. They consider themselves Catalonian, and a lot of them are separatists. Yeah, it's like a unique culture. It's like Catalan, they have their own language and their own food. And anyways, beautiful place. I highly recommend.
That's amazing. Let's talk about bike.
Sure. Yeah, man. I'm always down to talk bikes.
Describe your business and what services you offer.
So my business is a mobile bike shop business. So basically, like, I come to your door and I have my whole workshop within a van. And I conduct all of my repairs, my tune-ups, all that kind of stuff within the van. So, I try to make it easy for the client. My whole concept behind it was, I came up with this, like, during COVID. So I before that, I was working at a bike shop, and I started to see the landscape shifting, like brick and mortar locations started to become like kind of fragile, they were susceptible to lockdowns, and they were susceptible to governments, imposing like limits on how many people can go in. And the whole framework started to look very fragile to me. But what I, on the contrary, like what I saw was really starting to take off was the whole e-commerce, online, at-home services, things like that, And so, like, I basically tried to like reimagine what a bike shop could be. And I'm not trying to take credit for it. Like, there's a company that's been doing it for a few years. They're called VeloFix, and they were kind of like my inspiration. And so I thought that'd be really cool. And I sort of like had this vision that would be the future, at home services. People are working from home now, so they have more time. You come to them. They don't have to, take time out of the day. They don't have to get their cars dirty with their bikes. They don't have to leave their bikes at a shop for a week. Like it just all made sense, like from every perspective. And so like, I decided to give it a shot, and got my van and a couple of tools, and just slowly started, started up with doing some tune-ups. And then as I was making a little bit of money, I would just reinvest and buy tools and expand on my services. And I mean, it's by no means like done. I think there's a lot more work that can be done, but now I pretty much offer like tune-ups and drivetrain cleaning and repairs and all kinds of different
How did you
services.
get into bike mechanic?
I got into bike fixing when I was very young, when I was like probably 12, and just Frankensteining the crap out of like my parents' bikes and my old bikes. So I was always the kid to like take apart things and like, just mess around.
Yeah, but why bike?
Because going back to the kibbutz, like the only way you would really get from one place to the next is by bike. So I started riding bikes when I was 2 years old, and like I just was always obsessed with bikes, like really obsessed. Like when my parents bought me my first like adult bike when I was like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old, like one that had gears and all that, I had a name for it. I had like, I was like, it was like my machine. Like I loved it. I would get on it and I would like make like motorcycle sounds. And I loved it. So I was always obsessed. And then as I got a little bit older and like saw like, actually I remember the next phase I think it was like my 13th birthday or something. And my aunt got me a DVD called Rome. Okay, I highly recommend this to anybody listening. It's a movie called Rome. It's made by The Collective, and since then they've come out with a few other issues. But Rome was the first one, and it was basically beautiful, scenic mountain biking in like British Columbia, in like the Mojave Desert, and all kinds of different places around the world, but with really cool like ambient music as well. So it's just like this audio visual experience like nothing else. Like it's very, very cool. I highly recommend you check it out. And when I was 13 watching this, I was hooked instantly. Like I saw these guys bombing down like, ski hills at like 50 kilometers an hour on their mountain bikes and carving these trails and going between trees and jumping like 30 feet in the air. And like, that just blew my mind. I was like, this is insane. This is a whole other sport. I've never seen anything like this. And then that opened my mind up to like where the sport can take you. Like, it's not just cycling on the street for fun. Like, this is an actual extreme sport, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then as you go up in level to these extremes, like, you know, the technology on the bikes gets more complicated and gets cooler. And like, you have big knobby tires and disc brakes with 8-inch rotors and hydraulic brakes and like suspension that like you would find on a motorcycle, like just really cool technical stuff. And being like the techie geek that I am, I was just like, you know, like I fell in love with the tech and researched for hours and hours and bought my first downhill bike, and it just like snowballed from there, you know?
Did you try to be a professional biker?
Yes, but to be honest, I was just too much of a pussy.
You don't want to do the 30 feet fly there?
No. I remember, I think I was like 14 or 15, and I went to Bromont. That was like our local hill where people would do this. And I went there for the first time with my dad. And after like, you know, a little bit of convincing him, and he's like, yeah, okay, let's try it. And so we went there, we rented these kick-ass bikes. And I remember the guy asking us, was like, do you guys want protective gear? And my dad's like, you know, every like piece of protective gear was more money, right? It was like elbow pads, $10, knee pads, whatever. So my dad's like, you know, maybe we'll just take helmets. And the guy's like, okay, well, listen, for $15, you can get the full face helmets, you know, like the motorcycle ones. And he's like, oh, do we really need those? And the guy's like, I strongly recommend you take those.
So immigrant.
Yeah. So, right? So the guy convinced us, and my dad was like, okay, fine. Like we'll take the full face helmets. Well, let me just tell you, it's a good thing we did, because I took the gnarliest dive of my life. On the last run of the day, I tried doing this bridge jump. So a bridge is basically like you have, like, it comes up, like imagine like it has a ramp going up, and then it has like a straight section, and then it has the ramp going down. And like it was maybe like 12 feet in length. And I tried to gap the whole thing, but having zero experience in jumping. And so of course what happened was a complete disaster. I went off this thing, completely let go of the bike midair, and then just face planted, knocked out cold.
No way.
Oh yeah, I was completely gone. Not for long. I woke up like I came to shortly after. But the crazy thing is that full face helmet saved my face, because literally I would have lost every single tooth in my mouth. Like I landed face first. So whoever is listening and thinking of doing downhill mountain biking, take the full face helmets. It's essential.
But where was Dad when it happened?
My dad was ahead of me. He was actually the reason why I tried going so high, because you see, I'm biking and I see him in front of me, and then all of a sudden he takes off this jump and he gets like, I don't know, like 4 feet of air, and it just looked so much fun. And I was like, oh, 4 feet? No, I'm going to double that. I'm going to do 8 feet. And so I'm like pedaling as fast as I possibly can down this hill. And then that's when it happened. And I just, yeah.
How did they find out? Did he stop? Did he notice? Like, oh, where's Eli?
So what happened was there was a guy behind me, and I wiped out, and then the guy saw me wipe out. So then he biked over to my dad, and then I can hear him, like I was able to hear the guy screaming to my dad, like, Eli tombe, like, you know, he fell. And then that's when my dad turned around and ran over to me and helped me get up and stuff. And I was okay, nothing broken, but like I was just scraped up pretty bad.
Just concussion, you know. It might affect me the rest of my life, but whatever.
Exactly. But here's the cherry on top of it. So like I get up and we obviously pick up the bike that had just fallen. And we noticed that there was like the brake lever had completely bent, like it was almost like broken because I took a pretty hard fall. And obviously like there's, you put a deposit aside for these bikes in case for any damage. And so there we are, like we're about to return the bikes and my dad's looking at this thing and he's like, oh, fuck, I really don't want to pay the damage deposit. So he goes up to like the 18-year-old kid that's working at the hill. And he's like, here's the bike. And the kid points out like the broken lever. And my dad's like, nah, we didn't do that. And the kid's like, that's impossible. Like we inspect the bikes before we let them go. And my dad's like, no. You guys gave us the bike like that. And then he just somehow got away with it.
It's like, he gave him the look like, you want Krav Maga?
Yeah, exactly. You don't know where I come from.
That's amazing, man. So knowing what you know now, is there anything you would have done differently when you were started your business?
Yeah. I would not give so many discounts. No, I'm kidding. I was, I really love what I do. I really, really do. Like, it's absolutely my passion. And like my first year doing it, I did it for fun. I charged people nothing. Like I'm talking like $20 for a tune-up. That would take me an hour and I would drive to them. Like it was just stupid. I made no money. I lost so much money. And it wasn't because like I wasn't, I think I just didn't put a value to myself. I just thought to myself like, oh, $20 for an hour, that's not bad. That's more than I would earn working at the bike shop. But that's not how it worked. You have your materials, you have your gas, you have your this, it's your time. And I wish I would have put a little bit more value on my service earlier on. But then again, like it takes a little bit of time before you realize what it is that you're offering and that, you gain that confidence when customers tell you that like, they really appreciate what you're doing and that like you're actually really helping them out and all that kind of stuff. So maybe it just had to take its natural course.
For sure.
Yeah.
Starting a business in the pandemic, I'm sure it's extra difficult. What keeps you going?
I want to say that it was difficult, but the demand for biking was so high that I feel like it's unfair for me to say, like, I did not struggle like restaurants or like gyms struggle, like I feel really, really bad for restaurants and for gyms, especially that had to put their business on hold. And, many of them didn't make it through the pandemic. It's very, very sad. But when it came to the cycling world, like, man, it was insane. There's just demand coming out my ears. Like it was cool, So yeah, I want to say it was more like an opportunistic decision, I guess.
That's what business is.
That's what business is. Yeah, for sure. You gotta, I heard a while ago during one of the lockdowns, like somebody saying that like, when it comes to businesses in the pandemic, there's like two philosophies, there's like those who are going to say like, we're going to get through this and we just have to hang tight and we're just going to, reduce our costs and brace ourselves and, get through this. And then there were those that said, okay, it's time to pivot. How can we rearrange our model so that we can make money through this? And you saw that with some restaurants. Some restaurants were very quick to downsize, get rid of indoor dining, sign up Skip and Uber and DoorDash and all those things, and just started to become like a takeout business. And I think that's smart. That's resilience. It's not necessarily working against the current. It's working with what you have, and it's adapting.
That's beautiful, man. I think we're there, but one more question.
Sure.
What is the most important lesson you've learned in life?
Wow, that's a philosophical one. Be honest to yourself. Don't ignore your needs. Don't put yourself second or third or whatever. You need to take care of yourself. You have one life, and it's your life, and nobody's going to experience it for you. So you have to make sure that you take care of yourself. You have to make sure that you do what you need to be happy. And I'm not saying that that it has to come at the cost of anybody else's happiness. You know, hold your head high and carry your good moral values and virtues, but remember that you come first. And it took me a while to realize that, you know, but you can't make others happy unless you're happy. So yeah. It really comes down to that. And I think that, like, the way that I see it is, it's like, I'm actually going to borrow this idea from my father a little bit. He's a wise man. He calls it like his fundamental, like, pillars. And I see it that way too. So you have your health pillar, you have your social pillar, you have your financial pillar. You know, you have like these 4 or 5 pillars that really contribute to a healthy and balanced lifestyle. And those are the things that you really need to focus on to make yourself, like, feel good and realize your value. So, you know, focus on your health, you know, work out, make sure that you know, it's house cleaning. You have to. You're not going to go to bed without brushing your teeth. You're not going to get on with your day without doing a run or working out. It's just what it is. You know, social connections, very important. Like, you gotta, you know, even if you're feeling a little introverted, reach out to a friend, just say hi if they're thinking about you, you know, or, you know, just make sure you keep that connection. Family, you know, make sure that, you know, your priority is your family. You know, you gotta, so focus on those things. And I think that, that's going to make you well-rounded and balanced. And, remember that, you have yourself at the end of the day. The only person up in that head is you. So
for sure. Again, Eli, thank you for coming on the podcast. I really do appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the invite here. It was actually a blast. I was, like, a little nervous going into it, but it was awesome. Great experience.
Great to hear. Have a good day, bro.
Yeah, you too. Can't wait to see you.
Bye.
Ciao.
Again, Eli, thank you for coming on the podcast. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, listeners, for listening. This is Aaron Deliosa for An Immigrant's Life. I'll see you guys later.